it feels like everything is costing more because it is. Heating oil, airfare, public transit, fresh veggies, even coffee. All of this is becoming incredibly more expensive in 2026 than ever before. Hey everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're the Midlife Guys. So earlier this month, both Andrew and I got emails from our local electrical company, Dominion
Don't like when
Energy.
that happens. Not good. Never
Fuck
good
you,
when that
Dominion.
happens.
Our rates are going
They're
up.
going to cut your power off.
I think I'll be fine. Our rates are going up by an average of $8 a month. That's on
At
top
least,
of the rate increase that was approved last year, which added another $11 to $16 to our bills. Fuck you, Dominion. These days, it feels like everything is costing more because it is. Heating oil, airfare, public transit, fresh veggies, even coffee. All of this is becoming incredibly more expensive in 2026 than ever before. And I know that these price hikes are impacting everyone, but midlifers are being hit particularly hard because we tend to be the highest consumer of these goods. Well, why? Because we have families. So it begs the question, are midlifers being price squeezed? Andrew.
Yes.
How has the rising cost of living affected your daily life?
I mean, I see it in my bank statements and credit card statements and the receipts that, come home when we buy stuff. It's true that's everywhere. I noticed what's also kind of funny is I feel like, and this wasn't the case even a couple of years ago, that the cost of everything comes up in conversation like all the time, right? I feel like anytime for conversation with a neighbor or a friend, with, family, whoever, everyone always at some point brings up how expensive like XYZ thing is. And it's like everything is just more expensive across the board. And I definitely think you're right that it feels like that squeeze is on. And like we're kind of, I guess it doesn't necessarily hit us more directly than we probably spend more stuff because of, kids and their family things. But yeah, I think the squeeze is for sure there. I feel it. And it's funny too. I was thinking about a conversation I had with a friend about a year ago who was complaining about the price of stuff and made the comment. He said, I feel like when I look at my credit card bills every month, I become more and more radicalized each month. And I was like, that seems ridiculous. We're going a little bit overboard here. I'm getting closer to where he's at right now. I'm not going to lie, like more and more. I'm like, man, it just feels like we're hit constantly and the prices are never going to go back down. So it does make me kind of wonder, is this really working the best that it should be?
At the end of each month, when you have less and less saved up that you can put into a savings account or wherever you're putting your money, it starts to feel pretty bad. Get you a little angry.
Yeah.
All right. Before we really jump in, I want to take a second to remind our listeners that we did do a show a month or so ago about ways to save money. And we can put a link to that show in the notes below. So check it out. And leave your comments, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. I want to talk about how fucked up this situation is right now, because it is. How are we going to be able to navigate these higher prices while still saving enough money for emergencies or retirement or even our next home? Because the reality is the latest data from the Federal Reserve paints a pretty bleak picture for midlifers. Consumer credit card debt is rising fast. So are car payment defaults. Midlifers are also deferring medical care because they can't afford the copay. Housing, while mortgage defaults are not high in comparison to 2020, rent and mortgage defaults are climbing, and they're climbing very, very quickly. So today we want to talk about what midlifers can do to protect themselves and their families. And the first thing we can do is to make sure your voice is heard. Midlifers are in a great position as taxpayers, homeowners, employers, or mid to senior level in our careers to make our voices heard. We need to let elected officials know that we're fed up with all of this bullshit. We're fed up with the rising price of electricity. We're fed up with the skyrocketing insurance prices that provide fewer and fewer benefits. And those two areas, electricity, insurance, those are regulated. Those are regulated by the states. So the state elected officials need to fucking do their job. Every midlifer needs to be calling upon their state governments to do something about these rising prices. If your elected officials won't do anything, then it's time to vote them the fuck out. I think that everyone needs to be reminded that elected officials work for us, for the people. And I really want to emphasize that point because somewhere along the line, we have just become complacent about this. It's not the other way around. We don't work for them. They are supposed to be working for us. However, I do think too many Americans, although this isn't just limited to the United States, we get complacent. We let these elected officials take buckets and buckets of money from private companies and then vote against our interests and our wallets. We have the power to do something about it, but we don't. And as a quick side note, as someone who has run for local public office,
I was just saying, it sounds like you should run again. There you go. You're all fired up. I like this.
No, that was fun, but yeah, I don't have the energy to do it again. I was amazed by how many people I would meet on a daily basis that were frustrated and wanted to vent to me about foreign policy issues. Of course, local government does not have any control over U.S. foreign policy. None at all. But we're the people that they see the most, and they want to voice their frustrations to somebody. And they sure as shit aren't seeing their local Congress people because they're all never in their districts. So, I would remind them that they needed to speak directly with their members of Congress, even if they had to go to Washington, D.C. to do it, and that they shouldn't stop calling or writing or visiting until they get a fucking answer. So come on, guys. I don't know if everyone completely forgot how local, state, and federal governments work, but midlifers really need to step it up and start demanding change so that we aren't getting screwed. I mean, the fact is that baby boomers and older Gen X are the most consistent voting blocks. They are also the most politically active. Millennials and younger Gen X needs to show the fuck up and start working towards the change that we need. Andrew, any thoughts on this?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the thing about showing up is the biggest part, right? And I do think there could be lots of reasons for this. I don't have sort of scientific evidence for it, but whether it's complacency or feeling overwhelmed or distraction from social media and other technology, or it's just easier to like Netflix and chill than to actually look up who your representative is and send them a note or call them, which kind of feels overwhelming. Or we've been told for so many years, or feels like what we say doesn't matter. People, kind of elected representatives, are going to do what they're going to do. I think there are a lot of like pieces that go into leading to the complacency, but it's crap. Like, we shouldn't be complacent. I think there's a reason that, I remember as a kid, my parents were not like super politically active, but I remember them talking to our representatives or like calling and complaining about stuff when they didn't like how something happened. And I just don't think that's transferred as much to our generation. That idea of like, the whole point of representative democracy is to be able to hold your representatives accountable to what you want. And so if you don't like something, you need to say that to the elected representative, not just write about it on social media or complain to a friend. Like, that can be helpful, but you actually got to go and do something. And I can imagine maybe some eye rolls out there, but it's just true. Like, that's how this works. And there's really no other way around it other than putting in a little bit of effort to go and tell your elected official, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level, like what matters to you and why it matters to you, and the fact that you care. There's an example I can think of that happened in my neighborhood. We were talking earlier, Mike, we had some crazy storms in our area the other day, and our power, which often happens, we have bad storms, will flicker or will go out for a little bit of time. And last year, it just got a ridiculous amount of times the power was going out. And so some neighbors, including myself, called and complained to our favorite power company and got the standard like, oh, we're working on it. We can't control weather, blah, blah, blah. When really we dug a little deeper and found out there were issues with, like, our lines are older, they're not buried, there's equipment issues. And so when we weren't getting anywhere with the power company, we started contacting our local and state, because it's state regulated, officials and also filing complaints with our state commission that oversees the utility. And you know what happened after about a month of a group of us doing that? We got prioritized for the bury your lines list, and they've been out here like 3 times since then to like start to prep for doing some of the stuff that we want because we complained loudly enough about it and to the right people who then put pressure on them to actually make change. I mean, that's what you got to do. Just complaining about it's not, or complaining about it into the ether is not enough. You've got to actually, you know, go to folks who are making these decisions and tell them what you believe and why it matters to you.
I agree.
I'll get off my soapbox now, but it's true. I just don't know. Like, there's not really a whole lot of other solutions. I get the frustration and I get how it can feel overwhelming as well. I definitely understand that, but it's just, I don't think there's any other way than, we need to let our elected officials know how we feel and then talk to your friends and neighbors and others about it. If there's a common issue that you all care about, then get a group together. Multiple voices are going to be stronger than one voice. But I mean, that's how we make democracy work, is by making sure that the people have a say in what decisions are made for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We have a pretty big friend group, and whereas our fellow midlifers are quick to attend a fundraiser for an elected official, they'll never engage with these folks afterwards, or
Right,
and they're not engaging with anybody. They love a party, but they're not sitting there working towards a more perfect representative model. I really believe that every midlifer needs to have the contact information for their local, state, and federal elected officials readily available. As I said, I've spoke with so many of my friends about this, and they just don't want to get involved. And where it really becomes frustrating for me is so many people complain about schools and elected school boards. I have a friend who lives in a county north of here, and their school board has done nothing but watch their school achievement scores plummet.
I can guess which one, probably.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones showing up to these school board meetings are boomers who don't have fucking kids in the school system anymore. And this friend just told me she can't ever find the time to go to a school board meeting and yada, 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 being the parent and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is directly impacting your kids. This is directly impacting your kids. And you're not happy with what's going on. You got to find the time in order to get involved. Because, going to a school board meeting is really important. You have to confront these people and tell them that if test scores or if their achievement gaps are widening, which they are, something's got to change. And you heard her response to me at the end was like, it'll work out, in the end for her kids. And I was like, what the fuck? That's
maybe, I don't know. Like, will it? Yeah, that's
so your kids, failing the state assessment tests, and somehow it's going to work out. That's just exhausting and, completely. Yet again, I know midlifers are stressed. I know raising a family is very difficult. I know job situations could be very difficult, but this is important. I mean, this is how elected officials feel emboldened to walk all over their constituents because nobody's showing up. You've got to show up. So,
well, there's some people are showing up. It's just, and this is just like, it's a lot of boomers mostly, or people who are older are showing up, I think, at a lot of these type of meetings. And I mean, if you look, it's also like on the federal level, like Congress, whatever, the age is the highest average age I think it's ever been. And it's much higher than the average age for the country. And people are serving for way longer because you said earlier, Mike, boomers and older Gen Xers, they're the most reliable voting bloc. They're the people who are electing themselves to continue to kind of serve in these positions. And a lot of their policies are benefiting them because that's what they wanted. And like, if we're not standing up to talk about what matters to us, somebody else is filling that void. So, I mean, we've got to find a way to be more vocal, especially on the local level, because, and again, I hear you on the timing and the stress level and whatnot, but like local stuff is both the most accessible and the thing that most directly impacts your life. Like whether it's school board or for me, it took, a year to get some extra stop signs and speed humps in my neighborhood to help make it safer for kids. But it was worthwhile doing that because now it's a little bit safer. But it's just, again, it takes, standing up and talking, especially to those local officials, because they are a lot more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's no excuse for members of Congress or the Senate to be dying in office from old age, but that's
That's
where
a whole
we
nother
are. That's where we
subject, but
are right
yes.
now. So awesome. All right. What else can midlifers do? Community. Building communities is incredibly important during this time of uncertainty and price pressures. And I just read this fascinating story about a group of neighbors in a cul-de-sac that pooled resources and built vegetable and fruit gardens in everyone's backyard. Each neighbor was responsible for one or two crops, and then those crops were shared with everyone in the cul-de-sac. They even built a greenhouse in one person's backyard to
Oh,
plant
wow.
fruits that needed a certain climate. I think that's really cool. And it's a great
Mhm.
example of what building community looks like. It's also a great way to save some money as well, since vegetables have gotten so fucking expensive.
I'm super excited my tomatoes are coming in, so we don't have to buy tomatoes for a little while at the grocery
Exactly.
store.
I mean, the data shows tomatoes have gone up 43%.
It's
The price of tomatoes
yeah,
43% in this year alone.
it's just insane. Yeah.
So midlifers have got to do more of this, whether it be, the community in our neighborhoods, the communities in our schools, our churches, or whatever. Build a community that can support one another when or if things get tough, because the fact is, things are always going to get tough. There's always going to be ups and downs in life.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to go through a phase. Um, but unfortunately, and yet again, we've talked about this, the data shows that midlifers are not building these communities. The constraints of work and raising children consumes a lot of time, and engaging or building communities can be tough. However, we have to try harder because these communities are incredibly important. I mentioned in a previous episode that I was the president of my old neighborhood community association. I learned a lot from that role, but one of the most valuable lessons was how to be there for one another. Um, and it may not have had to do with anything with the neighborhood itself, but having that tight knit friends made a world of difference, especially during things like COVID. We used to have
Mm.
wine and jazz nights in people's front yards. A local wine shop here set up this thing where you buy this wine package, and in that package was a link to a live stream of a jazz concert that was taking place in the store. Of course, only the musicians were in the store because of social distancing, but we'd all just sit out front in somebody's front yard and listen to the concert or watch it. And if somebody brought their laptop out, um, and I can tell you that made a world of difference to some of our neighbors, especially the
Mm.
seniors in the neighborhood who felt
That sounds
really,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
who felt really lonely because of the shutdown. And the community that we built also helped one another with employment opportunities, because
Hmm.
over the course of the 10 years I was there, there were times when certain neighbors lost their jobs because of various conditions, and we rally around to help that person look for new jobs or introduce them to new networks. And so a strong, you know, community, yet again, wherever that may be, it's almost like an insurance policy for our lives. So, what do you think about that,
I mean,
Andrew?
I love the idea of building community. I think that that's great. It kind of reminds me of, I don't remember exactly where I saw this, but I've read stories about sort of similar things that a group of neighbors start like a book club together, or one was like a progressive dinner where they'd all do dinner at like different people's houses throughout the year. And it starts with like 4 or 5 people, but then can grow to like dozens of neighbors, and they start making these connections and building this community. I think that's wonderful. That's awesome. I will say on the flip side is sometimes that can be hard too, right? I mean, I know you had a great experience with your neighborhood association. I think I mentioned on a previous, at least a couple of times previously, that myself and another neighbor had started a neighborhood association for our neighborhood, and we've been doing it for a number of years. And it's been challenging trying to find other people to kind of step up and help out as well, which can definitely lead to feeling kind of burnt out and a bit overwhelmed by it. So I think the lesson I gained from that was certainly the idea of like building community is important, but it also matters in terms of trying to like get multiple people together, like not just relying on one or two people to try to carry a burden, I think is way too much. But maybe it's also just a matter of starting small. Maybe start with a small group of like two or three neighbors that you talk to consistently and find something that you all have in common or might like to do together and like start from there and then maybe grow it out. But I do think the idea of building community is a really valuable lesson. And I think it helps with some of the issues we talked about in the past too about sort of social isolation that a lot of midlifers feel, or just, not necessarily being connected to those around us. And I mean, you might as well, yeah, start with who's literally physically right around you and, start up conversations, see what interests people have, and maybe kind of start to build that community. Because I do think you're right that it can be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, and I don't want to limit it to neighborhoods because yet
Right.
again, PTAs,
Yep. Or different. Yeah.
really, really important. And for a while there, I was a member of a young professionals group as part of
Yeah.
my church, and
Churches are another good spot. Yeah.
yeah, I
Or
mean,
sports leagues, I guess, could be another place to build
sports
community.
leagues,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, yet again, with the church thing, there was no. We weren't doing anything related to church. It was just young professionals like
Yeah.
networking. So definitely lots of different ways to create community. Yet again, I understand that people are busy, but this is really important. And I think this is something that we've gotten away from as a society,
I think that's true.
not just midlifers, but a lot of folks getting away from, building those communities, which are important to the overall fabric of our society. So
And I think what we're saying too is, and not that there's not value in sort of online communities or virtual communities, because this can be beneficial for people or, certain activities. I think it can be for some, but I think what we're talking about is more like real life or in person type of community, like focusing on how do you build those social connections and relationships, in person, not just something that's online or virtual. Because I do think there's a difference when you're in the same like physical space as other people and interacting with them in that space.
absolutely.
Um,
All right. The final way to counter this ongoing squeeze to our wallets is ensuring that midlifers are bettering themselves or ourselves, since I'm a midlifer too. So on last week's show, I went through my list of things that I want to do in my prime time. And again, I know I'm in a different position because I'm not raising kids, but we all need to find time to do things that expand our knowledge. We have to learn new things. We have to take care of our bodies through exercise and nutrition. And I know a lot of people who are feeling stressed right now, a lot of people who are feeling stressed. They're stressed about their jobs. They're stressed about rising prices. They don't feel like they're able to get ahead right now. Stress has an outsized impact on the human body, and we often make bad decisions when we're stressed. Both Andrew and I know someone who was so stressed out about his job that he had a heart attack at 43 years old.
yeah.
Midlifers have to take care of their physical and mental health. The good news is that midlifers, for the most part, are doing these things. However, when stress starts taking over, we all tend to make less than ideal decisions. So it's so important, guys. Please take care of yourself right now, because that is going to help guide your decision making process to help you make smarter decisions moving forward.
Well, no, I've always been guilty too of this, which I think you haven't sometimes as well, Mike, is the idea of like if you're stressed, you're like, I'm just going to push through it. And that's not usually the right answer. Just like, charge through or just ignore it. I do think being cognizant of that, because I know at least two other people I can think of who've had various like heart issues specifically in their late 30s or early 40s, which is wild to me and like scary because, that can be incredibly detrimental and, end in a very dark place. So I think that, yeah, taking care of yourself is really important. I think going back to sort of thinking about the prime time conversation we had last week or on the last episode, which if you've not listened to yet, you totally should, because it's funny. My wife and I actually had a long conversation about sort of prime time before the episode came out, because we were just talking broadly about like life in your 40s. And we talked a lot about kind of like what we were thinking about that means for us. So those are, I think, good conversations to have, and kind of, I think how you take care of yourself is one of the ways to do that. And, as we're talking here, it got me sort of thinking. I'm going to throw an idea out and I'm going to say it, so hopefully it actually happens. But, maybe there's a way to combine the taking care of yourself, dealing with the stress of prices and everything else, and the whole building community piece of things together. I mean, maybe it's, start like a small walking group or something with friends or in your neighborhood. Or I know at least around us, there are a couple of bike groups, like join a bike group or join some other like social gathering. And I'm thinking about, there are 2 people I know in my neighborhood who go on walks every now and then. I might just ask them if I can join them, or like send a message out to a bunch of neighbors and be like, hey, does anybody want to go, for a 15 or 20-minute walk around the neighborhood? And I think just stuff like that is small. I mean, that's starting small, but I think that could be worth trying. So I'm saying it, so I have to do it. So in like a month or so, Mike, I need you to ask me if I actually did that. Now that I put it on tape, I'm going to have to definitely follow through. But I mean, I think there are ways to maybe think about building community and kind of taking care of yourself at the same time, or using those 2 things to reinforce one another.
No, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a really good idea, and I hope that you do. Well, knowing you, I know you will do it.
Probably, or hopefully.
So, I mean, I think that's a great idea. And, some of my best brainstorming has taken place on walks. So
yeah, that's true. Walking is wonderful. I sound old. I love to walk, but I do. It's actually very therapeutic, I think, walking. Yeah.
Oh, why does it sound old?
I don't know. It's not something old people do. Go for walks. Maybe not. Freeman shaking his head. No, he's like, yes, that's like an older person thing that they do.
I mean, a few hours ago, I was on my morning run today, and I passed by 2 senior citizens walking quite briskly.
Walking, that sounds right.
and as I passed, the woman yelled to me, "Good for you!" and I wanted to. I ran past. And I just went, but I wanted to turn around and go, "You too, lady." But that's
right.
all.
Good for you.
All people they like to walk. It is true. Can confirm.
But walking is good for you at any age, though.
It is good for you at any age. I can't remember. Somebody just brought this idea up. Somebody within our business community was like, "Oh, we should go for a walk and chat about this."
Oh, a walking meeting? I've seen some people do that.
Meeting.
Yeah,
so
that's like become a thing. Yeah,
all right,
that feels
I'll go for that.
That's a COVID flashback too, right? Wasn't that a big thing? I feel like when some people wanted to get together in COVID meetings, and like have a walking meeting outdoors, and it's like kind of coming back around. Yeah. Brian, too, I'd also love to hear what some of our listeners think, and either ideas of like how they've built community or things that they might want to try. Because again, I will definitely take inspiration from you all, in addition to my walking idea. So I'd love to hear what others might be, how they're dealing with the stress, but also how they might be trying to build community.
I want to know how they're going to implement some of these ideas, especially calling their elected officials. Because this is bullshit. This is bullshit. Tell them to stop raising our prices. We're never going to have any money. It's crazy.
Yeah, or at least be more responsive. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we've already blown through another 30 minutes. If you've not done so already, please like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps us out a lot. Remember that you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. Until next week, good luck, guys.
See ya.